Hello, everyone. This is Chris Vogler. I'm the author of The Writer's Journey, Mythic Structure for Writers, which will soon be published in its 25th anniversary edition. And obviously, I'm speaking to you in a very special time in which we've all been through a tremendous shock. We're in a new world now, where the coronavirus has affected everyone and it's drastically changing life as we knew it. And I went through that shock too, but in recent days, I've had a chance to go inward and consult with my inner guidance system. And I came back with some thoughts that might give you some comfort, some orientation, and some hope, and maybe a bit of a purpose. Because what I want to do today is issue a specific call to adventure to my fellow creative artists. So a call to adventure, in my language of the hero's journey pattern that I write about in my book, most stories begin in some kind of ordinary world where everybody knows the rules. Maybe it's not completely comfortable there, but there might be some conflicts, but people are coping. They figured out how to get along, and so life goes on. But that ordinary world for us is now a few weeks in the past, and it's rapidly disappearing in the rearview mirror. Things are very, very different now, very deep and rapid change. So the ordinary world is left behind, and we're all still in the middle of the reverberations of that shocking call to adventure. It's like a big noise on the soundtrack of your life. Something crashes that gets your attention and maybe causes you to freeze up for a while, as many of us have, just sort of paralyzed, not knowing what hit us. But that's, in my language, the call to adventure that announces that there's a big change coming and that we're going to have to adapt to it. We're going to have to do something. And sometimes in movies, this will be signaled by a specific kind of music. The composers and arrangers will reach for a certain part of the orchestra, namely the brass section, and will play on horns and trumpets and so forth, bugles, these sounds that remind us of military calls to battle or hunting calls. There's a kind of a sound that you hear in many movie soundtracks at this stage of the journey when the call to adventure is being issued. So we've all been through a big crash, big call on the soundtrack of our lives. But I'm saying here that there is a special responsibility here for creative artists because you have special skills that are really, really needed now. People need your stories more than ever. They always need them, but they need them more than ever now, your stories and your songs, because they need them to help them make sense out of the current situation, make them feel connected, but also give them some orientation. So I've been encouraged to see that people are doing this spontaneously, confined at home. Some people are making little skits and stories and songs that they broadcast out to the world, and it does help make us feel connected. So I remind you that you're part of something. You're part of a long chain of artists that have been walking along the same path for thousands of years, and ultimately it goes back to the tradition of shamanism. I say you are the modern-day shamans, partly because I think a lot of art and culture comes out of the shamanic tradition. They were the original artists. They were the original makers of songs and dances and stories. So we're all of us in this creative world are connected somehow to that shamanic line. Of course, there are real shamans still existing in the world in some cultures, and even in our culture, there are professional shamans. But I'm talking about you as a creative artist following in the footsteps of the old tribal shamans by traveling to other worlds, to the world of your imagination, and bringing back some vision to share with everyone else. So as a thought experiment, let's just cast our minds back to those earliest times when myths and stories were being born. And when people had some kind of disturbance in the force, when they found themselves in a crisis, like the crops were failing or the water holes dried up or the game animals disappeared, they would go into shock, as we all have at first. But after some time, they would collect themselves and say, we have some experts that we could consult here, the spiritual experts, the shamans. So they would go and seek them out. And they might be hard to find. They might be out in the wilderness. They might be out at the edge of civilization where they retreat into caves or in their huts to meditate. And maybe they were withdrawn from civilization because they weren't needed in those times. But now we really need them again, so people would seek them out with some questions about this new thing. What does this new thing mean, and what should we do about it? And that's when the shamans really came into their own, and they would dust themselves off and set to work doing their shamanic thing, which is to go inward to the spirit world, the world of their imaginations, to seek a vision that would hopefully heal their people. And they went by a specific path called the vision quest, and they used different techniques to access this other world and go into a special state of consciousness, a trance state. There are many ways to get there. They might do ecstatic dancing for hours in circles, drumming for hours and hours, chanting, doing different breathing techniques to bring on trance states, maybe starving themselves to create chemical changes in the body and the mind that brought on trances, or they might consult with the healing plants around them to access the wisdom of the plant world. But somehow or other, they made this inner journey to the spirit world, sometimes in the form of going up into the heavens by turning into a bird or climbing a ladder. That's a common image in the dreams and visions of the shamans. Or they might go down into some underworld to consult with the spirits there. But in all those other worlds, they would humbly, and this is important, in a humble way, they would approach their spirit guides with the current human problem and ask for their guidance. And if the spirits were in a good mood, they would give the shamans a gift in the form of a vision that addressed the problem and suggested how people might deal with it. And this is a little like Moses going up to the mountain and coming back with the 10 Commandments and showing people this is how we're going to be guided in our lives from this point forward. But the shamans had this other job to do. They had a job of interpretation. They had to turn the vision into a work that people could consume, that people could use in the form of a song or a dance or a story or a ritual, something that everyone in the community could learn and practice. And sometimes they were simple songs and dances that imitated the behavior of animals, for instance, to get back into the right relationship with them, to ask their forgiveness or ask their help. But these communal songs and dances were meant to give people also something to think about for themselves. And they, too, were supposed to go inward, meditating on where the society had gone wrong and maybe personally where they had done wrong or were out of balance, and how they might personally be responsible. And taking responsibility is another part of this shamanic way of going about things. And I think we're all doing that, sort of intuitively examining what we've done individually and as a society, as a culture. And we're thinking about changing our patterns as we go forward to make the world a little more respectful and respectful of nature and of each other. So the shamans went inward and consulted with their spirit guides, and we can see something like that happening with what's going on with our modern day shamans, the scientific experts. They're going off and consulting with their equivalent of gods and spirit guides, the science and the studies they do and the experiments they're doing. And they come back with messages and rituals for us to perform. These hygienic rituals of extreme hand washing and wearing of masks, much like what was done in the ancient world by the shamans. So I'm suggesting that you creative people are also like these old shamans. You are part of that heritage. And like them, you have access to a special world, the world of your imagination. You have developed that, and you're sort of an athlete at traveling back and forth from the ordinary world to this special world of imagination. Most people don't have access to that in their daily lives, but you're the expert in going inward, approaching the gods and spirits, humbly presenting the current problem to them, saying, hey, gods and spirits, we're in trouble here, so what have you got? What can you give us to share with everyone else? And then come back and translate that vision into works that can be shared and practiced widely. So I've done this in the last few days, consulting with my spirit guides, and I think this is something you have to do alone because it's a private conversation between you and your guides. So what you're hearing here is the result of my inward journey, and this is what my spirit guides told me. Remind creative people that they're part of that shamanic tribe, that shamanic trail that people have been walking for thousands of years. Encourage people to go inward, seek some visions, and then turn them into something that can be shared. So, look, what have we got to deal with here? We're dealing, all of us, with something so enormous that you might feel helpless, like there's nothing I can do to control this, or I would love to save the world, but I can't. I have no power on that scale, but we do have control over what's right in front of us. Your story you're working on, your song, your kitchen, your desktop, you can change the vibrational rate right around you, right in front of you. And I believe that you can use your will to take whatever good work you're doing there and intend for that to ripple out, to radiate out, and improve the vibrations of everybody around you. And, you don't even have to finish the song or the story today, but just working on it, applying some energy to it, and then willing that to go out and have some beneficial effect on everybody else, I think actually can work. So I'm thinking about an example of this from history. This is back in the darkest days of World War II in Britain. Someone wrote a little song called We'll Meet Again. And it was sung by a female singer named Vera Lynn, and it became very popular. And it was kind of a social compact that was created where people sang the song together and they felt better, they felt connected. It gave them some sense of hope. And this song is very simple. It just goes something like, we'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. And it operated on two levels. There was the obvious outer level of lots of social disruption, kept us from meeting in the way we like to. We had to send the kids away to the countryside to avoid the bombing. We had to shuttle out of shops, and many things were destroyed. So normal patterns were all upset. But the song says that eventually this will pass and we'll get back to our normal, happy social routines. But the song operated on another level, which was, it was saying, some of us aren't going to make it through this. And that's sad. But there's a promise in the song that even though we're separated from loved ones, we will meet again someday in the other world. So the song was a beautiful thing that connected the society and made people feel connected and part of something. So I am going to continue on this path and going inside, visiting with my own spirit guides, seeing what else they have to say. But I wish you the best on this, but I'm calling you to adventure. You creative folks have a job to do. You have an assignment, which is to go inward, seek your sources of inspiration, your well springs of inspiration, and then come back and turn your visions into creative works that can be shared. And if we do that, I think we'll have a better shot at getting through this together and making a better world down the road. So, as everyone says these days, be safe, be well, and carry on in this shamanic tradition until we meet again. So long, this is Chris Vogler.